Chapter 322. Many people in the Pei family's main residence knew that something might have happened. In the past, the old master of the Min family would always be treated with great hospitality whenever he came. He was more enthusiastic and grand than anyone else. The clan head would even personally instruct the kitchen to prepare a few dishes. Today, not only did he come and leave, but he also dealt with a few people in the blink of an eye. Everyone's hearts were beating like drums. Even the other masters restrained themselves slightly, not daring to cause any trouble at this time, let alone the servants. Of course, for those who lived in a more remote area because they weren't favored in the Pei family, they didn't have such concerns. After all, they were usually invisible. As expected, a few days later, more than half of the county town called Pei County was stirred up. Gongs and drums were played, and the gifts were worth a few streets. It was difficult to not cause a commotion. Most of the outsiders living in Pei County were related to the Pei family. Even if they were only distant relatives or family members of servants in the Pei family's main residence who had been graced and released from slavery, their lives were definitely more prosperous than those in other places. There were no beggars and the like. One had to know that such people couldn't enter at all. Naturally, they were somewhat concerned about the Pei family's main residence, whether it was out of curiosity or the mentality of wanting to join in the fun. Which aristocratic family has come to propose marriage again? Most likely, but this time it looks more grand than before. They're here for the fourth generation's first young lady, right? Someone nodded matter-of-factly. The first young lady's reputation is out there. She's the most outstanding girl in this generation of the Pei family. Naturally, she deserves such a grand occasion. Those who were completely unaware of the situation outside were discussing heartily. However, they didn't know that in the Pei family's main residence, those who received the news were filled with dark clouds. Clan head Pei's relatives who lived outside the main residence gathered around him. Some of them were even clan head Pei's elders. Although they were younger than him, no one knew what these people were thinking when they came. It was no wonder that so many people knew about it. One had to know that it wasn't just in the main residence, but also in the other residences of the Pei clan outside the main residence. These people were directly notified by the Min clan. With such great fanfare, naturally, more and more people knew about it. It was to the extent that it spread to all the Pei clan members in Pei County. Of course, there weren't many people who had the guts to approach clan leader Pei, whether they were genuinely concerned about this matter or just there to watch the show. Especially those who married from the Min family, they were even more worried at this time. After all, if the Pei family and the Min family had a grudge against each other, as the Pei family, they would be in the most difficult position. They might even be despised and ostracized by the husband's family. It was still fine for the older generation. After all, they had already taken root long ago. As a new wife, it was the most difficult. Therefore, at this time, not only would they not move forward, but they would also complain about Min Yuhan from the bottom of their hearts. In fact, they couldn't be blamed for this. It was only human nature. Clan leader, what is Min Yuhan trying to do? Not to mention that he's from the ancestors' generation, he's also the same at his age. He's simply looking down on our Pei clan. Someone was filled with righteous indignation. This person was probably someone who had completely linked the Pei clan's reputation to himself. The others also chimed in at the same time. It wasn't without fortune or calamity. One had to know that even if they were from the same clan, it didn't mean that they were of the same mind. Under the same roof, there were serious differences in treatment, not to mention that it was just the same surname. The treatment of the side branch and the main branch was naturally as different as heaven and earth. It was natural that there would be jealousy. It was a rare opportunity to see the main family make a fool of themselves. Therefore, how could they let it go so easily? Patriarch Pei was usually gentle and refined. He was even generous and easy to talk to. However, at this moment, his cold gaze swept over everyone. Even those who were usually the happiest and most lively shut their mouths and kept quiet out of fear. They didn't dare to meet Patriarch Pei's gaze and retreated without a trace. "What are you doing here? Go do whatever you need to do." The people surrounding clan leader Pei looked at each other. They suddenly felt bored and resentfully left one by one. Clan leader Pei's mood wasn't so good. In his opinion, Min Yuhan wouldn't do anything after that. However, he never thought that it would be far beyond his expectations. Not only would there be a follow-up, but there would also be such a big scene. As such, he had reason to believe that Min Yuhan might know more than he expected. There might even be things that he didn't know. There was another point that clan leader Pei cared about. Min Yuhan was actually a loner. After his father passed away, the two brothers split up. However, his father was also angry at him for being sentimental. Before his death, he warned him that he wouldn't leave a single copper coin for that unfilial son. However, Min Yuhan's brother wouldn't really abandon his brother. He never lacked for food and clothing. Moreover, he bought the best things. However, he didn't have any more. He didn't have any private property or a private house. Regardless of whether his brother was following his father's orders or acting out of selfishness, Min Yuhan didn't need anything. With such a big scene this time, it was obvious that it wasn't Min Yuhan's personal action. He couldn't afford to have such financial resources. Then, clan leader Pei had reason to suspect that this was no longer Min Yuhan going against him. Instead, it was Min Shi going against Pei Shi. The seriousness of the problem wasn't just rising by one level. With Min Shi taking the lead, the other in-laws who were already itching to make a move might also take this opportunity to make a move. Clan leader Pei's eyes were filled with malice. He was like a ferocious beast that wanted to devour people. Although clan leader Pei could easily dismiss the people around him, Pei Xiuying wasn't so relaxed. She was the eldest sister of the fourth generation. For a family with a strict hierarchy, it was naturally easy to dismiss the younger sisters. It was also easy for the collateral relatives to dismiss the older sisters. However, there were many aunts who were a generation older than her. Those who were born from concubines would restrain themselves. At this time, they would only make a few sarcastic remarks. The ones who really didn't get along with her were the twin sisters. They were a generation older than Pei Xiuying, but they were younger. Their mother was the second wife and their family background wasn't high. At first, because they were twins, they were very rare for a long time. However, as they grew older, their appearance couldn't be compared to Pei Xiuying. After they started learning, they couldn't be compared to her in all aspects. The twins were very eye-catching. However, with Pei Xiuying in front of them, they were naturally overshadowed. Furthermore, as the head of the family, everyone knew that clan leader Pei liked Pei Xiuying. As a result, even if there wasn't any enmity, it became an enmity. Who knew how much enmity stemmed from jealousy, and what right did she have? This was a rare opportunity. How could they leave so easily? People said things like, "Oh my, Pei Xiuying, you're really charming." Uncle Min even came to propose marriage. Uncle Min has deep feelings for that auntie. Now, because of you, he actually broke his stubborn principles. Pei Xiuying, everyone says that you're as talented and beautiful as that auntie. You really are very similar. Uncle Min is so sincere. Pei Xiuying, you should marry him. Isn't grandfather ashamed of Uncle Min? Grandfather dotes on you so much. This is a good time for you to show your filial piety. Although you might become a widow after a few years, you don't have to worry about concubines, right? Get out. Even if she was well educated, she couldn't help but have a cold expression at this time. Oh my, are you angry? My dear niece, haven't you always considered yourself to be the most virtuous lady? This isn't how you should be. Or is my dear niece also a hypocrite who acts one way in front of others and another behind others' backs? I really should let grandfather and grandmother see you like this. Seeing that you're my elders, I won't argue with you. Do you think I don't have a temper just because I've tolerated you again and again? Get out of here immediately. Otherwise, I'll make you kneel in the ancestral hall for a few days. Do you believe me? Pei Xiuying said coldly. The two sisters had never seen her like this before. They seemed to be intimidated by her aura and couldn't help but take a step back. Their expressions were particularly ugly. However, they also knew that Pei Xiuying's words were not nonsense. If she told the truth in front of their grandmother, they would be punished. Pei Xiuying, I want to see if you can continue to be so imposing. Sister, let's go. After they left, Pei Xiuying no longer put on any airs. She sat down and clenched her fists. Her eyes were terrifyingly cold. Pei Xiuying was the same as her great-grandfather. She probably didn't think that Min Yuhan would be so ruthless. At this moment, her hatred was monstrous. However, she also knew that this matter would be left unsettled. No matter what, if they went to the woman's side to propose marriage and the woman's family didn't allow it, there was no reason to force it. Their Pei Shi wasn't a soft persimmon that anyone could pinch. In the end, Pei Shi was still in decline and had no power. If Pei Shi was as prosperous as the previous dynasty, even the imperial family would have to give way. As a noble daughter of Pei Shi, she was even more honorable than a princess. If that was the case, how could a mere Minshi be so arrogant? An old fart dared to covet her and humiliate her. At this moment, Pei Xiuying became more and more determined. She must use Jin Qin Wang to ascend the throne. She must become the most honorable woman in the world. In reality, just as Pei Xiuying thought, this was at most a farce. It looked so lively, but in reality, not to mention Min Yuhan, the main character, there wasn't even a decent manager. The so-called marriage proposal didn't have the slightest bit of sincerity. It was more like a pure humiliation to Pei Shi. After this incident, although the two clans wouldn't completely fall out, there wasn't much difference. After chasing away Min Shi's people, Pei Shi looked at the red silk boxes in the courtyard. Since it wasn't for a good, then obviously, Min Shi wouldn't be so stupid to prepare a generous gift. He ordered people to open the boxes. Sure enough, there was something inside, but it was more or less the same as an empty box. Pei Shi was surrounded by dark clouds. The people around him didn't dare to breathe. They even wanted to find a hole to hide in and disappear. Min Shi. Good, very good. Pei Shi clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. Prepare a generous gift and send all these things back to Min Shi. Although it seemed like Min Yuhan was the one who did it, the furious Pei Shi wouldn't let Min Shi off so easily. If he didn't teach them a lesson, they would really think that Min Shi was easy to bully. Let all the Min Shi send the things back. Truth be told, as the leader of a clan leader Pei venting his anger on a woman from the inner residence was something that many people despised. Once a woman married into the Pei clan, she would become a member of the Pei clan. One of them was even a generation older than him, and she also had a son and a daughter. For generations living under the same roof. Doing something like this was another way of driving her back to her maternal family. Wasn't this also a form of humiliation? However, the people around him didn't dare to say anything. There were some smart ones who sensed that something was wrong and hurried back to the backyard to find Pei Shi's wife. They didn't want to cause internal problems in Pei Shi before they could repay Min Shi. As expected, the faces of the Pei Min clan members turned green with anger when they heard the words of the Pei clan leader. Especially the eldest of the Pei Min clan. He had always been a vegetarian and a compassionate person. But now, he was so angry that he smashed things. Pei sure is too much. The others might have swallowed their grievances, but this one didn't. No matter what, it was Pei Shi's fault. Just as he was about to confront Patriarch Pei, the Patriarch's wife rushed over. She tried her best to appease him, but even so, she was still rudely chased out of the house. She had lived like a princess for many years, especially after she became Pei Shi's wife. She had never been so humble before. It was impossible to say that she didn't have any resentment. However, she had no choice but to endure this. She swallowed her anger and went to find Pei Shi. In Pei Shi, especially in the main residence, Pei Shi's words were the law. His wife, children, and grandchildren could only obey him. They had been husband and wife for decades, so she understood him well. However, he was a man who didn't consider this matter. She couldn't ignore it. Otherwise, if word got out, her good reputation would be ruined. For Pei Shi, it would be one disaster after another. Fortunately, Pei Shi wasn't completely obstinate and didn't listen to her. It's my fault. Fortunately, Madam stopped me. I will personally apologize to Auntie later. Pei Shi's wife nodded. If that's the case, I will go back first. She didn't have much to say to her husband, who treated her respectfully. As such, Pei Shi, who was of high seniority, managed to escape. The others weren't so lucky. It was obvious that the collective return of the Min clan had caused quite a stir in Min County. As the head of the Min clan, he was naturally furious, especially when he saw the generous gift of the Pei clan's return. It made him grit his teeth in anger. However, it was this gift that made the head of the Min clan wary of taking action. Even if it was an aristocratic family, there were many dirty things. Of course, it didn't matter if it was just an internal matter. However, what Pei Shi sent over was the evidence of Min Shi's officials. It was so detailed that it made people feel that Pei Shi's people had seen it with their own eyes. They had been in-laws for generations, but they did such things in private. How could they not be angry? In comparison, Min Yuhan didn't have much of a reaction. After understanding Pei Shi's character, these things, in his opinion, were not strange at all. However, his elder brother was using him to make trouble for Pei Shi. The more obscure point was that he was preparing to bite off Pei Shi's flesh. He had this idea long ago, but there wasn't a good time before. Min Yuhan didn't care. These things, why don't you give them to Jin Wang? Min Shi's clan head was startled. Fourth brother, are you sure? https://11/11807/6653780. HTML. Chapter 323. Jin Wang is not so easy to use. Pei Shi will end up with nothing in the end. These things seem to be very disadvantageous to us now. Rather than leaving them in the hands of that old thing and making us very passive, it is better to send them directly to Jin Wang. According to Jin Wang's current attitude, he does not have the intention to completely reorganize the Jiangnan officialdom. It seems more like he wants those officials to spit out how much they have eaten. Even if the officials from our Min clan are a little greedy, but in the end, they have Min clan to rely on. They are not lacking in money and their greed is limited. As for those who are stained with human lives or whose hearts are too black and embezzled too much, these people are like malignant tumors. For the sake of Min clan's foundation, it is better to directly give them up. However much the clansmen have embezzled, that amount will be returned. According to Min clan's foundation, it doesn't matter even if it is a few times more. In this way, the things that old thing Pei Shi has in his hands are just like waste paper. What if Jin Wang still wants to pursue this matter? Moreover, are you sure that Jin Wang will not pursue this matter just because he said so? These are only a portion of people involved. Pursuing this matter will not take their lives. At most, they will be dismissed and will not affect the foundation of Min clan. Moreover, after tearing apart with Pei, Min clan will have no obstacles in the court in the future. As for whether Jin Qinhuang has the final say or not, eldest brother, do you really think that Jin Qinhuang is the same as the news from the capital? What do you mean? Min clan head's face became more solemn. The literal meaning. That's right, the literal meaning. There was no need to say more. As the head of an aristocratic family, he was usually very good at thinking. The head of the Min tribe lowered his eyes and pondered quietly. Min Yuhan sneered in her heart, that old thing Pei wants to use Jin Qinhuang to revive Pei. Not only that, he also wants to ascend to the sky in one step. Unfortunately, Jin Qinhuang is not isolated and without help. Pei's help may not be as good as chicken ribs to him. That old thing's heart is too big and unwilling to pay. Such a person, as a leader, no one will like him. What Pei can do, Min can also do, and can even do more and better. As an aristocratic family, it is not wise to take sides in the struggle for the throne. Aristocratic families were too large and had branches. They had a foundation, so there was no need for them to stake everything on a single throw. The safest way was to choose a side, and it would be best to choose only a portion of the people. Even if they lost in the end, it wouldn't hurt the family too much. After all, generally speaking, the final winner wouldn't do such a crazy thing as exterminating the entire family who supported the loser. If they met an emperor who was open-minded or wanted to save face, they might even put him in an important position. And if they won, the entire family would benefit. The mockery in Min Yuhan's heart deepened. Actually, these people were essentially the same. It was just that his brother was not as shameless as that old thing Pei. He still stuck to his bottom line. In the past, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong. But now, no matter how he looked at it, he didn't feel good. However, as long as it didn't conflict with what he was doing, it naturally didn't matter. Riches and honor are sought from danger. Prince Jin doesn't need insignificant things. If he wants to do it, he naturally has to do his best. The aristocratic families now are not like the time when they could control the country with the emperor. If they want to go further, they naturally can't be afraid of the slightest thing. Pei has been recognized as the #1 aristocratic family in Jiangnan for a long time. Even if they withdrew from the court, they still maintained it. Now that they are destined to decline, the Min might be able to replace them. Because he understood, Min Yuhan easily grasped his brother's weakness. Sure enough, he saw a flash of light in his eyes. Min Yuhan wanted to do his best to help Prince Jin ascend the throne. Borrowing the power of the Min was the best choice. Although the other party might not need it, he still wanted to do something. In the end, Prince Jin, how confident are you? 70%. Speaking of which, this was still conservative. According to him, it should be 100%. Because he believed, and because some things were not allowed to fail. I need to think about it. The head of the Min clan clenched his fist. It could be seen that his mood was not stable. It should be. After all, this is a matter of great importance. Elder brother is the head of the clan. It should be serious. Min Yuhan nodded as a matter of course. The head of the Min clan twisted his beard and nodded, regarding Pei Xiuying, if Yuhan really takes a fancy to her, it's not impossible to take her in. If I really take her in, the one who will be humiliated will be Bai En. The original purpose was to find some trouble for Pei and shave Pei Xiuying's reputation. If that old thing could really stop and not find trouble for Prince Jin, of course, it would be for the best. However, it was clear that this possibility was not high. Speaking of which, if Pei Xiuying didn't willingly lower herself and had thoughts of her own, Min Yuhan would not act like this. After all, she was a beautiful young lady. At his age, he wouldn't make things difficult for her. It was just that to say that she brought it upon herself. But from the perspective of those who thought that they could contribute everything to the clan, they would probably never do anything wrong. I'll go back first. And go back and rest. Min Yuhan left. He was very clear that this elder brother of his would definitely agree. Even now, the title of the #1 aristocratic family was still moving. Sure enough, the head of the Min clan found Min Yuhan the next day. This is a matter of great importance. Fourth brother, I'm afraid that you will have to make a trip personally. Speaking of this, there was some difficulty on his face. A few days ago, this fourth brother fainted after seeing Prince Jean. This time, he came to find him again. If fourth brother doesn't want to go, I will find someone else. It's fine. A few days ago, I just suddenly saw him and couldn't control myself. In fact, he didn't dare to look directly at Prince Jin's face. He was afraid that he would lose his composure and do something impolite, causing the other party to be unhappy. Fourth brother, you don't have to make things difficult for yourself. Although he said so, his expression still showed that he wanted Min Yuhan to make a trip. Min Yuhan thought, sure enough, he had been the head of the clan for too long. Everything he did was so hypocritical. He was like this even in front of his own brother. So what if he was a little more honest? Thus, Min Yuhan didn't say much and directly took the things prepared by the head of the Min clan. Then, he had people prepare a carriage and headed to Chuanzhou Prefecture. As for those grandmothers who came back from Pei clan, of course, Min clan wouldn't treat them badly. On the contrary, they would take good care of them. To a certain extent, they were even prepared for their return. At this time, Shannon Prefecture's provincial examination had already ended. Because Prince Jean was personally holding the line, naturally, there wouldn't be a situation where the examination papers were marked based on personal preferences. No matter if one liked to use flowery words or upright words, they were all thrown to one side. In short, one had to have substance. Of course, good handwriting was also important. The top 3 were not personally selected by Li Hongyuan, but it was also noted by him. In short, no one would be stupid at this time. After this matter was completely finished and the hearts of the scholars were appeased, Li Hongyuan seemed to remember that Governor Shuojing was detained in his own house. Li Hongyuan personally interrogated Governor Shuojing of Shannon Prefecture. The officials of the academy who were originally very tense naturally became even more tense at this time, not to mention those who had problems. Li Suyen, this black-robed guard, was very good at interrogating people. Prince Jean was also not bad. They didn't know the process of his interrogation. In short, in less than 2 hours, the black-robed guards were dispatched again. Other than Chongzhou Prefecture, the other prefectural cities of Shannon Prefecture had sent people. It was obviously a big move. And this Governor Shuojing was also officially stripped of his official hat and official uniform, preparing to be escorted back to the capital. When Li Hongyuan returned to the residence, Jingwan inexplicably felt that there seemed to be a bloody smell on his body. But when she sniffed carefully, it seemed that there was nothing. Wan, what are you doing? Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows, puzzled. Smelling your body to see if there is the smell of rouge and powder. Jing Qian smiled. Is that so? You have to smell it properly. Li Hongyuan used the back of his finger to gently rub her cheek. Perhaps it is on my body. Wan, do you want to help this husband change clothes first? He lowered his voice and leaned close to her ear. From time to time, he would perform his seductive techniques. Jingwan still couldn't resist. And Min Yuhan just happened to come to the door at this time. In reality, Li Hongyuan already knew about the things that happened in the main residence of Pei clan. As for the details, he didn't know. The reason was still the same. Those who served the masters closely were basically the children of the household. To turn these people into nails was difficult. To a certain extent, it was like a wave of the heart. Naturally, he was too lazy to do anything. However, even though he didn't give the order, the people who lived in Jiangnan couldn't be completely useless. They didn't need to go too deep. Actually, Jingwan was also a little interested. This imperial noble consort's former fiancé could also be considered a sentimental person. He was also quite ruthless in his actions. Pei family and Min family's interests had been tied together for many years. Perhaps there had been some cracks in recent years, but they had also been hidden very deeply. This time, even if they had not completely fallen out with each other, there was an obvious hostility between the two families. Li Hongyuan went to see Min Yuhan and brought Jingwan along. Naturally, it was Min Yuhan's first time seeing Jingwan. Of course, it was just a hurried glance. He vaguely remembered that last year at the summer palace in Qingde, Jin Qinwang had to calculate 100 times to marry the woman he liked. Thinking about it, it should be this Jin Qinwang Fei. Looking at Jin Qinwang Fei's attitude, it should be known that he really put Jin Qinwang Fei in his heart. People like Pei clan head would suspect that Li Hongyuan was acting, but Min Yuhan wouldn't. Because he loved deeply, he clearly knew this true feeling. It was said that Jin Qinwang Fei liked beauty. As long as it was a beauty, he could ignore everything else. It was really wrong. It was also said that Jin Qinwang Fei was jealous, fierce, and intolerant. In his view, that was also Jin Qinwang Fei's own intention. Because he loved her deeply, because he doted on her like she was the apple of his eye, he didn't want her to be wronged. https://11/118076653784. Chapter 324. Of course, Min Yuhan wouldn't ask why Jingwan was here. Instead, she simply explained her intentions. Li Hongyuan wasn't interested in what was presented to him. On the other hand, Jingwan opened the documents and flipped through them. They were sent to the Min family by clan leader Pei. The Min family didn't bother to sort them out. Each person received a piece of paper, which meant that there were more than 10 people involved. However, compared to the Min family, it was just a small matter. Jingwan's eyes narrowed when she saw 2 pieces of paper. She deliberately took them out and passed them to Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan might not accept something handed to him by others, but since it was given to him by Jingwan, he would definitely accept it. He shook the letter slightly and quickly read through it. According to Qi Yuan's laws, if one is sentenced to death, the other will also be sentenced to death. It seems that the Min family wants to save these people? The parasites of Qi Yuan and the scourge of the Min family. These people deserve to die. As a member of an aristocratic family, he always felt that he was superior to others. Moreover, he always thought that he had the support of his family. If he was clear-headed, it would be fine, but if he wasn't clear-headed, he would think that his family could contend against the entire country and could do whatever he wanted. Sometimes, it was necessary to teach these people a lesson. At the same time, it was also necessary to make an example out of them. Of course, from Min Yuhan's point of view, it wasn't really for the Min family's foundation. To a certain extent, people who knew what was good for them were more likable than those who didn't know what was good for them. Aristocratic families are indeed aristocratic families. Their actions aren't ordinary at all. Jingwan chuckled. Li Hongyuan turned around and saw Jingwan taking out 5 stacks of banknotes. If he wasn't mistaken, there should be 100 banknotes in each stack. The denomination of each banknote was 10,000 taels. 5 million taels wasn't ordinary. Would an ordinary person be able to take out so much money so casually? However, as an aristocratic family, it would be abnormal if they only had a few 100,000 taels. Min Yuhan didn't know how much money his brother had prepared. He didn't open it to take a look, but he had an idea in his heart. This amount wasn't considered small, but in Min Yuhan's opinion, it was still too little. However, he wouldn't say anything. This wasn't within his scope of concern. Min Yuhan, you're a smart person, and I'm not a stingy person. In other words, as long as she didn't do anything that made him unhappy, it would be good for everyone. Rest assured, Your Highness. He originally only intended to help Jin Qinhuang do things and do his best. He was very clear on what should be done and what should not be done. Your Highness, this concubine sees that it's getting late. Why don't we have Mr. Min stay for a meal? What do you think, Mr. Min? Min Yuhan's eyes flashed slightly. No matter what, this kind of thing should be approved by Jin Qinhuang first. Jin Qinhuang Fei seemed to have only said a word and then asked for his opinion. It could be seen that Jin Qinhuang Fei had a lot of say in front of Jin Qinhuang Fei. It could be seen that Jin Qinhuang Fei's position in Jin Qinhuang Fei's heart was very important. Moreover, the two had not been married for a long time. Jin Qinhuang Fei's birth and upbringing were not bad. To be able to be so casual, it could be seen that she was close to Jin Qinhuang Fei. This was very good. The two knew each other and promised each other. Of course, there was nothing better than this. It's this commoner's honor. Your Highness and Mr. Min can chat first. This concubine will let people prepare. Li Hongyuan nodded his head indifferently. Jingwan got up and left. Because there were outsiders, as the host, he naturally had to accompany them. Obviously, he couldn't eat with his wife. This made Li Hongyuan a little unhappy. Looking at Min Yuhan, his eyes unconsciously became colder. Min Yuhan was a little inexplicable. He didn't know how he provoked this master. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan did not flare up. He casually asked some questions that he wanted to know and that the other party might be able to answer. To Min Yuhan, she naturally told her everything she knew without reserve. It had to be said that apart from other things, Jin Qinhuang Fei and Min Yuhan chatted quite congenially. At first, Min Yuhan was surprised at Li Hongyuan's knowledge and insight. However, he was relieved. This was Wanru's child. Wanru was exceptionally intelligent. Her child naturally surpassed her. Moreover, he was born in the imperial family. Although that place was a dragon's pool and the tiger's den, it couldn't be denied that it was a place that surpassed others. Li Hongyuan didn't have any opinion on Min Yuhan's knowledge. To be honest, if Min Yuhan didn't reach this level, he would feel bored and this person would probably be abandoned by him. Lunch was probably a happy meal for both the host and the guest. After that, Min Yuhan took his leave. He didn't ask how Jin Qinhuang would deal with the people of the Min family. He didn't want to ask and there was no need to. In Qiyuan, after passing the Jinshe exam, although one could return to their hometown to take up a post, this kind of situation was rare. There weren't many people of the Min family in Jiangnan. They were scattered all over the Qiyuan. The two most serious people were not in Jiangnan. Obviously, they needed to settle accounts. Min Yuhan sat in the carriage with his eyes closed, thinking about what to do next. Li Hongyuan directly gave the remaining 5 million taels of banknotes to Jingwan and said that it belonged to Jingwan's private property. Wang Ye not only gave his own little treasury to this concubine, but also let this concubine make a little treasury. Jingwan teased. What's wrong? Which woman with a dowry doesn't have private property? Li Hongyuan said as a matter of fact. Yes, you're right. Jingwan giggled and hugged him. Don't worry, I will prepare some pocket money for Wang Ye. Wan, do you think that Ben Wang needs pocket money? It seemed that he rarely took out money and basically gave it to his subordinates. Although the amount this time was relatively large, it wasn't a problem for him. It shouldn't be classified as pocket money. Food, clothing, and other things like that. Did he need to take out money? Jingwan stared at Li Hongyuan. Well, this was a downright overlord. He belonged to the type that could be unrestrained without money. TSK, what were those people who married into rich families in her previous life? How many millions could they get? What grand gifts could they get? Could they be compared to her? She took it all in her pocket. Things in Chuanzhou Fu are almost done. Let's go sightseeing tomorrow. Li Hongyuan stroked Jingwan's hair. This was almost done. Those in the outer courtyard. Chuanzhou Fu's accounts had been checked clearly. Of course, it was only the accounts on the surface. Li Hongyuan still detained people. Was he preparing to release them? Probably because he knew that they were doing it for money and not for their lives. Those who had relatively thin family assets had already taken out most of it. However, there were some people that Jingwan was 100% sure that their family assets were still very rich. Although those officials' wives had vaguely expressed that they were too poor to eat, these people were already on Jin Qinwang's blacklist. They were the batch that had to be dealt with. Therefore, Jingwan didn't care. If they didn't give it now, they could only copy it out. Things in Min Shan County are already being handled. Let them be released today and let them be comfortable at home for 2 days. After that, they should be transferred to the prison. This matter shouldn't be made public, right? Of course not. But it can deter people in other places in Jiangnan. This way, the future will be smoother. Jingwan nodded. Chuanzhou Fu's prosperity doesn't lose to the capital. Lin Chuan River is filled with willow trees. The scenery is pleasant, and there are countless pleasure boats and famous singers. Li Hongyuan continued. Husband knows me best. Jingwan acted coquettishly in his arms. You are a woman. https://www.yanguiwo.com/11/11807/6653787 www.yanguiwo.com yanguiwo.com. Chapter 325. Li Hongyuan hugged Jingwan and watched her act spoiled and, shamelessly, in his arms, unmoved. Until she looked at him pitifully, he could no longer maintain the cold indifference on his face. He sighed helplessly. Wan, you're a woman, how can you have such thoughts? Little, I'm just curious and want to see it. Jingwan was very clear how deviant her thoughts were and how serious the impact on her reputation would be if people knew that she appeared in that kind of place. However, the person in front of her was Li Hongyuan, her husband. They had only been married for 3 months, but it was not an exaggeration to say that he was the person she trusted the most. She didn't have to worry about anything in front of him and could say whatever she wanted. Even the words that she couldn't say in front of her grandmother, she could say to him. Jingwan wasn't clear whether her Jin Wangye's heart was strong enough to accept anything, or his tolerance towards her was particularly high. The latter was more likely, right? It seems that this husband has indulged Wan more and more until she's out of control. Li Hongyuan was not angry. On the contrary, he was somewhat gratified and faintly proud. In fact, he was almost certain that Jingwan's origin was not ordinary, so no matter what Jingwan said, he would not be surprised. Isn't it a Yuan who indulged her? Jingwan continued to snuggle in his arms. I indulged her. So, no matter what, he had to continue indulging her. Who let her be his sweetheart? Mu, and, since his master had summoned him, Mu Gonggong naturally slipped in and respectfully waited for his master's order. Go and book the most famous pleasure boat on Lin Chuan River. Tomorrow, Ben Wang will take Wang Fei to listen to music and enjoy dancing. Mu Gonggong quivered, thinking that he had misheard. He cautiously glanced at Li Hongyuan's cold eyes and shivered again. Yes, this servant will do it. Sure enough, one shouldn't question any of his master's words and only need to strictly carry them out. He had been by his master's side for so long, yet he hadn't learned even half of his master's skills. He really deserved a beating. However, if the princess consort wanted to go, she had to make sure that the pleasure boat was clean. Apart from the usual items, nothing else was allowed. However, things didn't go very smoothly. In the pavilion pleasure boat known as the #1 pleasure boat in Linchuan, there was a girl who was going to be married tomorrow. It had been widely announced 3 months ago, and many people were waiting. She was already 2 years late compared to others. Before that, she was a courtesan on a pleasure boat. She only sold her skills but not her body. Her fame was so great that it spread throughout the whole of Jiangnan. The entrance fee to see her was ridiculously expensive. Many people had been waiting for her to get married. Finally, the day had come. There were many people who had come specially for her. Whether it was the SALT policy or the cheating in the academy examination, such big things could not affect these people's enthusiasm. Of course, it couldn't be said that there would be no impact at all. At the very least, there would be far fewer Guan family members involved. However, what kind of place was Jiangnan? There were a sea of rich people. Whether it was the brothel or the pleasure boat, without these powerful childs, they might make more money. However, even so, Mu Gonggong didn't intend to compromise at all. Not to mention that his master was not a person who would compromise, it was even more impossible to take the princess consort with him. It was not only about their ability to do things, but also about the prince's face in front of the princess consort. If they, the servants, lost the prince's face, they would be skinned alive. Not only did they have to do it well, but they also had to do it as best as possible. Besides, the gaily painting pleasure boat was only so big. Although the gaily painting pleasure boat was mainly used for sightseeing and there was a big stage behind it, Eunuch Mu still felt that one gaily painting pleasure boat was not enough. It would be more interesting if 8 or 10 gaily painting pleasure boats worked together. Mu Gonggong faced the owner of the pleasure boat, a beautiful woman who was over 40 years old but still charming. As soon as Mu Gonggong boarded the pleasure boat, he revealed his identity and stated his purpose. Jin Qinhuang came to Chuanzhou and what he did, the entire Chuanzhou knew. There were also many rumors about him, especially about his appearance. They didn't know the situation in the capital of Li Hongyuan and only knew that he was a powerful prince. Just based on this point, it could make many people's imagination run wild, especially those women who were addicted to stories and couldn't extricate themselves. They always hoped that one day they would have a wonderful encounter, an earth-shattering and sentimental love, all kinds of twists and turns, and finally become the big winner in life. Jin Qinhuang undoubtedly became the male lead, and Jin Qinhuang Fei became the most vicious person. In the end, she was still cannon fodder. Well, imagination was beautiful, but reality was cruel. After Jin Qinhuang arrived at Chuanzhou, he basically didn't show his face outside. The officials' welcoming banquet wasn't set up, so it was even more impossible for outsiders to see him. Naturally, they dressed even more fiercely. That legendary character was finally going to show himself outside. His first goal was their pleasure boat. If this was spread out, it would be a matter of great face. But how could the timing be so coincidental? The beautiful woman hesitated, probing whether Mu Gonggong had the possibility of letting Jin Qinhuang participate in tomorrow's coming-of-age ceremony. In fact, if Jin Qinhuang really participated, the one who would lose out would only be her. After all, as long as Jin Qinhuang set a price, it was estimated that no one would dare to compete. Moreover, if he wanted to take the person away, the owner of the boat would have no way to stop him. What kind of person was Mu Gonggong? He naturally understood the other party's meaning in a flash. He looked at the other party with a smile that wasn't a smile. Our Wang Ye has a nickname in the capital, Living King of Hell. The other Wang Yan princes, regardless of whether they have power or not, he can step on them if he wants to. If he wants to cut them off, then he can cut them off. Moreover, our Wang Ye's temperament is more solitary and doesn't like to play with others. The meaning of these words couldn't be more obvious. We are all doing business, so we must pay attention to integrity in everything. With a bang, Mu Gonggong's teacup fell on the table. The owner of the boat is surprised, right? Facing such a colossus like the imperial court's Wang Ye, even if the owner of the boat had a backer, she wouldn't dare to show her face at this time. She couldn't help but feel a burst of bitterness in her heart. Nu Jia obeys. When the time came, Jin Qin Wang would leave in a carefree manner. Because her pleasure boat was untrustworthy, and there was a 90% chance that she would lose the lead that she had painstakingly cultivated, she would inevitably lose a lot of guests. Moreover, their pleasure boats were prevalent here, and the competition was unusually fierce. Every year, there would be a ranking battle. Her pleasure boat had already won the first place for 3 years. The several families behind were all eyeing covetously. They would certainly take this opportunity to ruthlessly step on her pleasure boat, and it was possible that they would squeeze out the top 10 in an instant. https://11/11807/6653791. Chapter 326. The owner of the boat, who was originally just forcing a smile, upon hearing this, the smile on her face became much more sincere. What Gonggong said is right, making Wang Ye happy is the most important task. In this way, the one to suffer would not be her family alone. With a group of people accompanying her, they would not be able to scheme against the pavilion. On the contrary, she might be able to scheme from within. In the end, even if she lost this lead, she might not necessarily suffer a loss. Nu Jia is so bold. Can you give Nu Jia full authority to handle this matter? Naturally, the owner of the boat is more familiar with all aspects. We people naturally need to be by master's side at all times to serve. Mu Gonggong expressed that he could clearly see the other party's thoughts. However, this had nothing to do with him. What he needed was only the result. As long as the matter could be handled beautifully, this was only a small matter and there was no need to take it to heart. There is one thing to remind the owner of the boat. Master likes cleanliness in all aspects. Foul air and so on absolutely cannot exist. Master's actions are entirely based on his mood. He might just purely listen to the music and enjoy the dance. Therefore, it is best not to do unnecessary things. Nu Jia understands. In terms of handling matters based on one's mood, there was probably no one more powerful than them. Naturally, they did not dare to be rash. Mu Gonggong nodded and got up to leave. The owner of the boat naturally hurriedly got up to send him off. When Mu Gonggong's figure could no longer be seen, she slowly got up. With an unfathomable expression, she stood in the same place for a moment. Someone come. A young servant girl came in and respectfully greeted, "Owner. Return to the pavilion. Jin Wang Ye would be coming tomorrow." If it was only her pavilion and pleasure boat, it would be fine. In any case, they were doing business every day. At worst, they would just clear the place and everything else would be the same. But now, they had to unite 10 houses, no, it should be 12 houses. The 12 most competitive houses, there was no reason to exclude the last 2 houses. If there were benefits, everyone should reap it together. Speaking of which, the famous brothels of Chuan Zhou Fu all had their own pleasure boats. On the contrary, the famous pleasure boats also had their own brothels. The two were inseparable. As for which side was the main one, each house had their own characteristics. Of course, if one of these two was missing, then it would not be up to standard. Although each family had their own program, they couldn't completely go their own way. That way, they would appear scattered and sometimes they wouldn't be able to support the scene. Although the owner of the pleasure boat wanted to scheme against the other opponents, she couldn't mess it up because she was responsible for taking the lead. If something happened and Jean Qinhuang blamed her, her pleasure boat would be the first to bear the brunt. Injuring the enemy 800 and losing 1,000, no one would do this kind of stupid thing. Before he was even halfway back, someone had already come knocking on his door aggressively. Thinking about it, it made sense. He had spent more than 10,000 silver taels to book the pleasure boat, and it had only been half a day. In the end, he didn't even see the shadow of the boat. If he was alone, it would have been fine, but he had brought along a few good friends. Being stood up was a small matter, but losing face was a big matter. How could he not be furious? The owner of the pleasure boat rubbed her temples. She didn't want to pay attention to it, but in line with the principle that harmony breeds wealth, this was also a good opportunity to release tomorrow's matter. Although this was far from enough, some things had to be done step by step. He asked someone to bring them in and appease them nicely. Then, he slowly explained to them the reason why they were here. The person who was unable to restrain his anger, upon hearing Jean Qinhuang's name, his anger was immediately extinguished. Now, the entire Sichuan Zhou-Fu's officials were pinched in the hands of this master-like doe. Usually, those arrogant and despotic official hedonistic sons, if the family's control was a bit lax, they could still stroll outside, but they absolutely didn't dare to be rash. And most of them hadn't shown their faces for half a month. They were merely rich people and had a natural reverence for the imperial family. Jean Qinhuang has booked the pleasure boat. Although it can only be used tomorrow, according to reason, Gongzi booked it today. Nujia should let the girls play the zither and sing songs to accompany Gongzi to play. It's just that Jean Qinhuang did not book only Lu Xia's house. Lu Xia must coordinate with the other 11 houses. It involves not only the allocation of the pleasure boat, but also the arrangement of the girls. Because the matter was so sudden, Nujia was also somewhat flustered before and momentarily forgot about Gongzi's booking of the boat. Please forgive me. There are more than 10 pleasure boats under Lu Xia's name. Actually, we can allocate another one for Gongzi. But compared to this main pleasure boat, Gongzi might not be satisfied. How about waiting for 2 days? At that time, we will give Gongzi a 20% discount. What does Gongzi think? Since the words had already been said, naturally he wouldn't continue to be unforgiving. Moreover, the other party was Jean Qinhuang. Even if he didn't book the boat, it wasn't that he didn't have any face. Moreover, thinking about it, to book 12 houses at the same time, such a thing had never happened before. Just based on this, other people had to stand aside. Boat owner is too polite. The matter was resolved and the boat owner politely sent them off. Time was pressing and they couldn't continue to delay. Since Jean Qinhuang has booked the pleasure boat, then miss daybreak. Another person in the same group spoke up. The people beside him also nodded in agreement. Although they didn't want to think about it, but watching the excitement wasn't bad either. Looking at the current situation, they were afraid that, the boat owner naturally understood his meaning, tomorrow's ceremony will naturally be cancelled. As for the rest, nothing is known. Naturally, no one dared to make up something that wasn't certain. Especially with the other party's status, if they weren't careful, the other party's one finger could crush them until not even ashes were left. After the guests left, the curtain at the back was pulled open. A beautiful woman leisurely walked over. If one looked carefully, there was a bit of eagerness. Mei Yi, is what you said just now true? Her voice carried an uncontrollable excitement. The boat owner lifted her eyelids and glanced at her. What the other party was thinking, she was very clear. When this matter was known by all the girls, there would definitely be many who would be tempted. The woman saw that Mei didn't answer her and knew that she seemed to have gone overboard. But after thinking about it, she knew that this kind of thing couldn't be faked. The boat owner, Mei, returned to the pavilion boat. The location was the veritable red light district of Chuanzhou. The entire area, the location of several streets, to a certain extent, could definitely be considered a city that never sleeps. According to the normal situation, the girls in the pavilion would get up one after another at this time. Of course, a few people's work and rest schedule was the same as ordinary people, such as the top hostess, Daybreak. The ceremony was imminent. As long as it was a normal person, their mood would definitely not be good. Daybreak was the same. Although she didn't show any expression on her face, she hadn't performed on stage for 3 days. This was the best explanation. However, Mei wasn't angry. As long as the girls under her were obedient, she had always been more tolerant. Mei returned to her residence first and quickly wrote 11 invitations. She had people send them out immediately and ensure that they were delivered to the owner. After thinking about it, she went to Daybreak's bedroom. As the top hostess's bedroom, the layout naturally wasn't small. There were 2 rooms inside and outside. The furnishings were exquisite and quite extraordinary. Those who didn't know would think that it was the bedroom of some noble lady. Under normal circumstances, this was the time for her afternoon nap. But now, she probably couldn't sleep. She was, seriously, playing the pipa in her hands. Who was Mei? She had also walked out of this step. She was also a talented and beautiful woman. Many of the girls under her had been personally taught by her. How could she not hear that Daybreak was absent-minded? Her fingers were only mechanically plucking the strings because she was familiar with them. There wasn't the slightest bit of emotion. If you don't want to play, then don't play. Mei said neither lightly nor heavily. Daybreak's fingers stopped plucking. She put down the pipa and came back to her senses. Mei. Mei sat down at the table. The servant girl at the side quickly poured a cup of tea. Mei didn't look at Daybreak. Auntie Mei didn't look at the teacup, she just stared at Daybreak with a seriousness she had never shown before. This was the most special girl under her. Although she wasn't from a rich family, she still lived a rich life. However, her luck was bad and her fate was rough. When she was under her, she was only 12 years old. Although she wore rough clothes, she already showed the beauty of a budding beauty. Because of her foundation and careful training, she blossomed with a brilliant youth. She was quiet and reserved. No matter what was taught, she would learn and not resist. However, even when she was learning how to serve men, she didn't have a vulgar aura. Before the age of 15, she basically didn't let her show her face. After the age of 15, she tried her best to delay her marriage. However, in the end, she was in this line of work. It was impossible for her to never get married. Moreover, as her fame grew, whether she got married or not was no longer up to her as the owner. After a while, she said, "Tomorrow's marriage ceremony is cancelled." This was originally a happy news. However, Daybreak's eyes only moved slightly before returning to calmness. "Are you unhappy?" "It's just that tomorrow is cancelled. It's not like it's cancelled forever. A day earlier or a day later, isn't the result the same?" "Not necessarily. Jean Qinhuang has booked the pleasure boat for tomorrow. If Jean Qinhuang takes a fancy to you and wants to take you away, even if he doesn't give it to me, I can't do anything." Daybreak understood what she meant. In fact, compared to many brothels, Aunt May was already considered to be very humane. She said this, it seemed like she was giving herself a reason to let go, but it was also a sign of her soft heart. Although there were some contradictions, at certain times, she hoped that Daybreak could be good, but her emotions would prevail. Even so, Daybreak's face still didn't have any emotions. She picked up the pipa again and fiddled with it. To me, it's naturally good. However, the one who will be hurt is Jean Qinhuang Fei. A woman whose fate is always manipulated by men, how innocent. You've already fallen to this point and you're still thinking about others. Daybreak, how many years has it been? You're still like this. It's probably because I've been too good to you. If I let you suffer, let you taste the taste of being ridden by 1,000 people, and also encounter those special hobbies of abuse, you probably won't be so naive. At that time, if you encounter a good opportunity, maybe you'll nibble on the so-called first wife and also want to climb up. Mei Yi said sarcastically. But what she was thinking in her heart, only she knew. https://11/11807/6653798. Chapter 327. Even if Daybreak said so, Mei Yi was still prepared to open the door for Daybreak. Moreover, from her position, she was fully responsible for this matter. It was completely justifiable for her to give the girls under her command a better opportunity. Even if others were jealous that she was using her power for personal gain, they would feel that it was a matter of course. Putting aside this matter, to a certain extent, between Mei Yi and Daybreak, there really was a mother-daughter relationship. The two people casually chatted about trivial matters until a servant came to report that the people invited by the owner of the boat had arrived. Mei Yi then got up and left. After Mei Yi left, Daybreak was somewhat lost in thought. It was unknown if she was thinking of something or if she was simply lost in thought. Mei Yi held a round fan in her hand to cover half of her face. Because it was summer, at least 9 out of 10 of them were relatively cool. In front of Daybreak, Aunt May still had the appearance of an elder, but now, she had the aura and smile that a group of people should have. Even if she wasn't meeting a benefactor, when facing these old rivals, she still had to bring out her full grandeur. She gracefully appeared and greeted them with a smile. The girls under her command competed in beauty and they were naturally no exception. Don't look at how they were already middle-aged soon young in terms of age. Basically, they all walked the same path. If they occasionally met someone with a special taste and they were willing, it wasn't a rare thing for them to receive guests at this age. I probably don't need to say the reason for inviting you all. In order to prevent these people from dragging their feet, it was clearly written on the invitation. With such a big banner, these people would be able to slip away quickly. Even though she won this time by borrowing the name of Jean Qinhuang, she didn't feel that it was wrong at all and deliberately revealed the smile of a victor. 11 people gritted their teeth at her, but there was no other way. Who told them to not hold the title of number 1? 4 people who didn't understand the situation of Sichuan Zhou. If they had enough money, their first choice would definitely be the best. This so-called best was naturally the one with the title of number 1. Mei Yi, enough. Enough, Mei Nyang. Who doesn't know each other? If you have something to say, just say it. Don't keep us in suspense. We all know what it means to be a prince. No matter what he wants, we just have to serve him well. If he's happy, it's naturally good for everyone. If he's unhappy, it's naturally bad for everyone. Some people couldn't stand her smug look. Mei Nyang sat down. If that's the case, then I'll be frank. Auntie Mei told Eunuch Mu's wishes one by one. Of course, it wasn't just the original words. The effect was at least 12 times exaggerated. Moreover, her words allowed the pavilion boat to have absolute control. That's basically it. Everyone knew that there was an element of exaggeration in this, but they didn't know how much of an exaggeration it was. Therefore, even if they were indignant, they didn't know where to start. Since Mei Nyang is the one making the decision, then what are the rules? Mei Nyang, just tell us directly and we'll listen. If there was nothing to say, then he would just let it go. There was no problem, and there was no need to fuss about it. However, it was absolutely impossible to trample on them too harshly. What do you all think about using the Myriad Flower Terrace and the 100-Boat Ferry? It was clear that Mei Nyang already had a plan in mind. Everyone was silent for a moment. 100-Boat Ferry. Our generation has only heard of it. We've always fought with each other openly and covertly. Even during festivals like the Lantern Festival and the Mid-Autumn Festival, we've never cooperated on the 100-Boat Ferry. This time, we'll use pleasing Jean Qin Wang to take a look ourselves. The others didn't say anything, but they obviously agreed with this idea. Whether it was the Myriad Flower Terrace or the 100-Boat Ferry, there were rules to follow. The main problem was the details. Let's not talk about other things. The top courtesans of each family must be the main characters. It's just that if they're together, how can they be separated? If they're together, how should they be together, and if they're separated, how should they be separated? After roughly agreeing on the rules, it was time to act on the specifics. The first thing was naturally to call back the people from each family's pleasure boats as fast as possible. Because they didn't know how long Jean Qin Wang's patience and interest could be maintained, they had to prepare all aspects as much as possible. There had to be enough programs. The girls from each building and boat were basically all within the predetermined range. Every day, there would be pleasure boats on Lin Chuan River. When there were fewer, there might be a boat 100 zhang apart. When there were more, there would be a boat at the head and tail of the boat. But today, it was a little strange. It seemed like it had been more than 2 shichin, yet not a single boat was seen. What kind of situation was this? Did all the rich and powerful people have a change of character at the same time? Of course, this was the thought of those who didn't know the situation. Those who knew were like the guests who were driven off the pleasure boats. Faced with the various buildings and boats, they kindly apologized and even returned a lot of silver taels. Adding on the fact that they knew the whole story, they could only pinch their noses and admit it. They were somewhat angry but didn't dare to speak out. And the cancellation of the wedding ceremony of the top courtesan of the pavilion boat, Miss Daybreak, naturally spread more and more. Some people felt that it didn't matter. Naturally, there were also people who were extremely resentful. For example, those who were determined to get Daybreak. Among them, there might be people who only fancied Daybreak's appearance. Naturally, there were also people who were deeply in love with her. After all, there weren't many young masters who fancied the women of the brothels and brothels, but from time to time, there would be a few. Daybreak just so happened to meet such a person, and it was the young master of the Guan family. His family had originally been messed around by Jean Qin Wang. Now, even the woman he liked was going to be taken for himself by the other party. The hatred in his heart was practically about to condense into a substance, but unfortunately, he couldn't do anything about it. Thus, the hatred also included himself, a burning pain. That's right, in these people's view, Daybreak was definitely in Jean Qin Wang's bag. Of course, there was also this kind of group of people. For example, in a certain dark room, this Jean Qin Wang is really as extravagant as the rumors say. Moreover, he's a classic example of only the magistrate is allowed to set the fire, but the common people are not allowed to light the lamp. He even wants that kind of insatiable Wang Fei. What Qin Wang? He's just a lowly peasant who stole the Huan family's country. A rotten loach is a rotten loach. After sitting on the throne for a few years, he became a true dragon. Dream on. The others didn't comment on his words. At this time, their mouths were cursing nimbly. Once they got out of here, they dared to make a sound. And as for how the Li Imperial clan was, they were well aware. Let's not talk about other things, this is a rare opportunity. If a turtle hides and doesn't go out, we can't get close even if we want to. Now that he's taken the initiative to come out, there's no reason to let him go. Do I need you to say this? I've been waiting for this day. A dissolute and lecherous man, coming to a place like Chuanzhou, how could he not come out? https://11/11807/6653799. Chapter 328. When the preparations were almost done, Auntie May sent someone to the other courtyard where Li Hongyuan and the others were currently staying. She wanted to inquire about when Jin Qinhuang was going out. Although the 100-boat ferry was fine regardless of whether it was day or night, but at night, with various kinds of lanterns, the mood would be better. Many people liked the mood. Super fast and stable updates. However, Auntie May did not have much hope of knowing Jin Qinhuang's schedule. She was just trying her luck. If she could know, it would be better. If she could not, she would just make more preparations. Speaking of which, Li Hongyuan's guards were not few in number, but those who knew about his private affairs were still few. After all, even if they were trusted by him, it was impossible for all of them to be nearby guards. On the other hand, the closer they were, the more they would know. However, there were only a few people who knew that it was actually Jingwan who went to the pleasure boat to listen to music and enjoy the dance. Therefore, when the guards at the door knew the purpose of the visitors, they were a little stunned. Wang Ye had deep feelings for Wang Fei, this was absolute. Previously, no matter if it was Kaiming Prefecture City or Chongzhou Prefecture City, whenever Wang Ye went out, he would bring Wang Fei with him. Places like brothels, he would not even touch the corner of the street. Now, Wang Ye let people book the pleasure boat. They were used to Wang Ye's attitude towards Wang Fei. How could they not be stunned when he suddenly did this? However, even if they thought until their brains broke, they would not know that this was actually Jingwan's wish. However, this kind of thing, it was obvious that people outside would not dare to casually joke about it. Using this kind of joke to come to the door, was it not courting death? The problem now was, should they chase them away? If they chased them away, they were not qualified to decide Wang Ye's matters. If they did not dare to leave, if they went in to ask, it might alarm Wang Fei. It did not seem right. In the end, they decided to go and ask. Anyway, they could not face Wang Ye directly. One of them went in, and the one who came out to meet him was naturally Mu and nodded, wait a moment. Wang Fei usually had a plan when doing things. Even when going out, it was the same. She was not like Master, who did not care about ordinary small things and acted as she pleased. As soon as Jingwan heard Eunuch Mu's words, she guessed that it was probably not as simple as a gaily painting pleasure boat. It was likely that a lot of people were involved. However, whether it was Mu or the owner of the gaily painting pleasure boat who had a hand in it, there was no need to investigate now. To some extent, it was more appropriate to make it known now than to keep a low profile. Mu and go and see what kind of preparations they've made. If necessary, we can cooperate with them to prevent them from brushing away our good intentions. Yes. As for Jin Qinhuang's opinion. What was that? Alright, it's not that exaggerated. However, if Mu were to ask again, he might not get anything good out of it and might even incur his master's dissatisfaction. The result would be the same anyway, so why bother to ask again? It took Mu almost half an hour to go back and forth, and the news he brought back was considerable. More than 4 hours. That was the time it took for a large-scale party in her previous life. Of course, it's best to make it perfect. Let them arrange it according to the most suitable time. Just inform me when the time comes. Aunt May sent someone to follow Eunuch Moo back. In this way, Eunuch Moo did not have to go again. As for the upcoming 100-boat crossing, Jingwan was looking forward to it, but she didn't seem to be in a rush. After all, with her experience in her previous life, she had seen wonderful things that she hadn't seen before. Regardless of whether it was gorgeous or profound, those directors were all talented. She just didn't know how good the director's ability was in pure ancient style. When it was time to do something, she would do it. After waking up from her afternoon nap, she took some time to wake up. Then, Jingwan's clothes for going out were sent over. It was a set of men's clothes. Jingwan raised her eyebrows. Looking at the craftsmanship, she knew that it was made by her own maid. Obviously, it was not possible to have it before, but there was no trace of it being made in a hurry. Either it was changed from someone's clothes, or it was originally prepared for someone. It had already been embroidered and only needed to be cut and sewn. It doesn't seem strange for a dignified Wang to bring a maid to the pleasure boat. Although it was a bit strange to bring a woman to that kind of place, but some people were so willful that you could not do anything about it. Jin Qinhuang's style should be considered outstanding. Didn't they all say that Ben Wang likes both men and women? Instead of bringing a maid, Ben Wang is more willing to bring a handsome young master. Li Hongyuan was half leaning and half leaning, looking at Jingwan with a bit of charm. Jingwan clearly felt Li Hongyuan's exuberant interest. It seemed that this was a very interesting matter to him, and it seemed to be more important than anything else. This man was almost obedient to her in every way. So, this little interest, how could he not respond? Jingwan went to the inner room to change her clothes, tied up her hair, and also brought a folding fan. Then, with one hand behind her back, Jingwan lightly fanned herself as she walked out with a perfect smile. What a romantic young man, but his gaze should not fall on her chest. Li Hongyuan narrowed his eyes and sized her up. In the end, his gaze still fell on that position. Thus, his smile became more obvious, turning back to before we got married. Wanwan could still reluctantly pretend to be a young master, but now, Jingwan closed the folding fan in her hand and casually threw it over. Li Hongyuan stretched out his hand and caught it. With a snap, he opened it. That was the true boundless romance. Jingwan was well aware of her own body. In the past few months, she had grown faster than she had expected, be it in terms of height or other areas. In fact, her puberty was considered to be late in comparison. At certain times, intercourse could indeed promote puberty. After this period of time, even if she wanted to grow, she probably wouldn't be able to grow much. Who is to blame? Jingwan glared at him. Blame me, blame me. Although Li Hongyuan did not know the relationship between puberty and external factors, but this kind of thing, even if the responsibility was not on him, it was on him. He was even somewhat complacent. How could Jingwan not know that she was being teased again? She was too lazy to continue, otherwise, in the end, the one who lost would still be herself. What's the difference between this and women's clothing? Naturally, you can't fool people at close range. But from afar, it's not a problem to fool them. Using the folding fan to cover up appropriately. Li Hongyuan gestured to his body. By tomorrow, the news of this prince having Nan Feng will spread throughout Chuanzhou Institute. What's the meaning of this? Jingwan was a little puzzled. I want to see if the level of someone's shamelessness will increase by a little. Jingwan nodded. Yuan, just say that you want to find an idea. It's not that complicated. To put it bluntly, a certain someone's bad temper is acting up again. https://11/11807/6653803. Chapter 329. Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan out the door before she remembered whether or not she should bring a maid. Just let He Mei and Bai Xiao follow. Li Hongyuan directly selected people. Li Hongyuan naturally wouldn't let them fall behind in terms of martial arts. On the contrary, he even stepped up their training. When Jingwan didn't know, they didn't fall behind every day. Originally, He Mei and Bai Xiao didn't know who the person who was supposed to be teaching and training them was. Now, they basically knew. However, no one exposed it and didn't mention it to Jingwan. To some extent, this was a matter between Wang Fei and Wang Ye. Men's clothing. A maid should be the same as her master. No need, it won't affect them. In fact, if you follow the arrangement on the pleasure boat, it doesn't matter if you follow openly. Jingwan lightly rolled her eyes. Was it interesting to talk about this now? If he didn't intend for her to wear men's clothing from the beginning, he wouldn't have taken it out. Moreover, he clearly knew that she would never refuse such a small matter. This man was really, from the beginning, he harbored evil intentions, and had her firmly in his grasp. Li Hongyuan chuckled and scratched the tip of Jingwan's nose, then naturally kissed it. When the guards, including Yu Zhongqing, Li Suyen and the others, saw Jingwan in men's clothing for the first time, their first reaction was to wonder when Jin Qinhuang had a little gongzi that he was so close to. The next moment, they discovered that it was Qin Wang Fei and hurriedly moved their line of sight away, not daring to look anymore. As for the reason why Jin Qin Wang Fei was dressed like this, no one went back to investigate. When Li Hongyuan went out, if it wasn't for Jingwan's request, he was basically a master who wouldn't hide his whereabouts. Today, he had some purpose, so naturally, he wouldn't hide it. There weren't many guards by his side, a total of more than 20, and there were also a few female guards. Were all the guards just like this? Of course not. Li Hongyuan knew very well that Jiangnan was the nest of the remnants of the previous dynasty. He didn't know the exact number of people, but it definitely wouldn't be a small number. This group of people was dedicated to finding trouble for the Li royal family. Assassination was a normal thing. In today's situation, it would be strange if they didn't make a move. With Wan Wan by his side, he would naturally make proper arrangements just in case. When they arrived at the Linchuan River, they saw a two-story pleasure boat that looked much larger than ordinary pleasure boats. The curtains hanging around the lower level had all been dismantled, and the interior was exquisitely decorated. The upper level was like a house, but there was no roof in the middle. It was like a walkway connecting the two sides. It was relatively narrower, and there was a wider space on the outside. Of the houses on both sides, the left side was shorter, while the right side, in Jingwan's eyes, was either a small three-story or a fake one. The roof was also carved and decorated with colored glaze. It could be seen that a lot of thought had gone into this pleasure boat alone. Of course, the real beauty wasn't the pleasure boat, but the people on the pleasure boat. Because of their arrival, a group of beauties came out of the pleasure boat in a line. With Auntie May in the lead, there were 2 rows of 12 people behind her. They could be said to be national beauties, each with their own unique characteristics. They were fat and thin, and behind them was a group of maidservants who looked younger. Looking at their beauty, in a year or 2, they would probably become a veritable cash cow again. Not to mention other things, just this scene alone was definitely a feast for the eyes. With so many beauties gathered together, and the kind that cultivated both inside and outside, even the beauty contest in her previous life probably couldn't reach this level of standard. After all, those people were beautiful, but could they be good at zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting? Learning and cultivation. Jingwan secretly praised in her heart. This trip was really too right. Facing so many beauties, even eunuch Mu couldn't help but take a few more glances. The most indifferent was probably Li Hongyuan, especially when he saw Jingwan's eyes, which seemed to be shining. She had never looked at him like this before. His expression instantly turned cold. If looks had killing power, these beauties would probably be disfigured. Li Hongyuan grabbed Jingwan's waist and walked straight to the pleasure boat. Although Auntie Mei and the others were squatting with their heads lowered, they could still see Li Hongyuan's movements from the corner of their eyes. Naturally, they hurriedly signaled the people behind them to disperse and not block the way. Jingwan retracted her attention and turned her head to look at Li Hongyuan. When she turned around, she understood his current state and couldn't help but laugh. Li Hongyuan looked at her from the corner of his eyes. Is it very funny? His face darkened even more. Jingwan quickly reached out to stroke his back and smoothed his hair. No, absolutely not. But Li Hongyuan's expression didn't improve at all. Perhaps we should go back now. Sometimes, I even wonder if I shouldn't have brought you out. My heart is playing more and more cross-country. Today, we chartered the pleasure boat. Tomorrow, will we go directly to the brothel? There should be Nanfeng restaurant in Jiangnan. Do you want to see it? Jingwan really didn't know what to say. When this man was childish and petty, he was just like a 3-year-old child. At this time, it was best not to say anything. She looked at him, focused on him, and treated him as the whole world. She didn't ask about the scenery in front of her, didn't ask about the road under her feet, and then, even if Li Hongyuan didn't look at her, his face softened. He reached out to cover Jingwan's eyes. Don't look. Jingwan smiled like a flower. Li Hongyuan turned his head to look at her. You're sure that I won't do anything to you? All right, all right. This good time and beautiful scenery, don't disappoint. The voices between the two people hadn't been restrained. Mei Yi and the others didn't dare to look directly at Li Hongyuan. They could only tell from his clothing that the person standing next to him was a man. At first, when they saw Jin Qinwang's movements, they were surprised that he was actually Nanfeng. But when this person opened his mouth, the woman's voice couldn't be more obvious. Now that they understood the reason for Jin Qinwang's appearance, it couldn't be said that they weren't shocked. However, this kind of thing, it was best to block it in the stomach. No matter if other people knew or not, in short, it couldn't come out from their own mouth. https://11/11807/6653807 Mobile reading website. Chapter 330. Li Hongyuan brought Jingwan to a short table and sat down. This net is worth your collection. Soon after, the others followed in. On their side, there was only Yu Zhongqing, Li Suyan, and Yi, Mu Gonggong, the black and white beauties, as well as 2 female guards. Fortunately, Mei Yi was already prepared. She had already thought of the situation where Jin Qinwang brought more people. She hurriedly waved to both sides and the 2 pleasure boats that were parked 3 zhang away quickly rowed over. The remaining people were divided into 2. Li Hongyuan slightly frowned. The more unfamiliar people there were, the greater the danger. Moreover, even if the pleasure boat was big enough to stay in this space together, it was still quite crowded in Li Hongyuan's eyes. It was also very annoying to look at. As someone who followed Li Hongyuan all year round, how could Mu Gonggong not know? He quivered. Boat owner, there are too many people here. I'll have to trouble you to send some to the other 2 pleasure boats. People like Mei Yi and the others naturally paid attention to the reactions of the guests at all times. If it was an ordinary guest, even if it was a high official, she could still talk and laugh freely and even show off her flirtatiousness. However, because of the other party's noble status, she couldn't stare at them as a matter of course. Moreover, there was that aura that kept strangers away. Also, the person dressed as a man was most likely Jin Qinhuang Fei. Thus, she could only watch carefully. When she saw Jin Qinhuang's frown, she knew that he was displeased. However, she didn't know the reason at all. Fortunately, she received a reminder in the next moment. Naturally, she didn't dare to have any neglect. There were nearly 30 servant girls serving on this boat. She gritted her teeth and only 4 were left. The rest were all sent away. This time, the people on the pleasure boat were basically cut down by half. Why were there so many servants on the pleasure boat? It was because the 12 people behind Aunt May were the best of the 12 families. These people all had 2 servant girls by their side to serve them. In addition to the people Aunt May had prepared for emergencies, there were so many people. Originally, he didn't think much of it, but now it seemed that he really didn't think much of it. As for the leading ladies of each family, there was no one to serve them. In the future, they would do everything by themselves. In Aunt May's opinion, this was not a big deal. Not to mention what could happen on this pleasure boat, at least half of the 12 of them had served others before. Although they had lived a pampered life for a few years, it was not to the extent that they could not live without others at all. The gaily painted pleasure boat began to glide on the surface of the water leisurely. Outside the boat were some strong old maids. They seemed to be very good at steering the boat and were unusually stable. The other 2 pleasure boats were less than half a zhang away from each other, half a boat's length behind. Today's main guest was Jingwan. The others were all accompanying guests. So naturally, whatever Jingwan said was what it was. However, these people had never accompanied a female guest before. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Moreover, it was fine if it was an ordinary person, but her status was honorable and they couldn't afford to offend her. As the other's husband, Jin Qinhuang sat beside Jingwan and poured himself a cup of tea. He didn't have any intention to speak and was completely accompanying the guests. In the end, it was Jingwan who spoke first and broke the silence. You don't have to care about it. Do what you need to do. I'm purely curious, that's why I appeared here. Speaking of which, if it was revealed, her reputation would be damaged the most. If it was spread back to the capital, she might not be able to be a Wang Fei. She was the most relaxed person. In the end, it was because she had absolute trust in Li Hongyuan. If it could be completely normal, it was not impossible. The problem was that the pleasure boats and brothels, whether it was singing or dancing, all had a decadent color. It was not suitable. If Wang Ya and Gongzi don't mind, this slave will play a song for the 2 of you. In the silence, Daybreak stood up and crouched down with a pipa in her arms. Jingwan's gaze fell on Daybreak. Among these people, her impression of Daybreak was quite deep. Compared to the others, Daybreak's temperament was more prominent. Perhaps it was because of this line of work, the others more or less had a bit of a prostitute's aura. Even now, whether it was their dressing or words and actions, some subtle movements still exposed this point. If one didn't know that they were in this line of work, perhaps they wouldn't have noticed that Daybreak didn't have this kind of feeling. There was another point. Just now, after they sat down, these people came in and naturally saw the appearance of the husband and wife. Even Mei Yi's eyes flashed with amazement. Not to mention the others, until now, their eyes seemed to fall on a certain person. Only Daybreak's gaze was completely restrained at the beginning. Moreover, there was no fluctuation in her eyes. It was as if this person was the same as the others she had seen, there was no special point. There were 2 possibilities for this kind of person. First, their heart was like still water, or even like stagnant water. Second, to attract attention. Okay. Jingwan smiled and nodded. Daybreak walked towards the small stage in front of them and sat down quietly. Her fingers plucked at the strings of the zither. From the beginning, it was clear that this was not the decadent music that was popular in the brothels. It was gentle, comfortable, and also bright and beautiful. It was as if a breeze had been added to the cool surface of the river. Not only that, Daybreak's movements were also very beautiful. More importantly, she was very focused. She was so focused that it seemed like there was only the zither in her hands left in the world. The current Daybreak reminded Jingwan of her sister-in-law, Sun Yijia. Comparing a prostitute to a noble lady from the Duke's public house was definitely a humiliation to the latter. However, in reality, Daybreak was even better. Jingwan wasn't the only one who was attracted. Li Hongyuan also slightly focused. It was obvious that this skill had reached a rather high level. Jingwan held her chin and listened quietly. It was unlikely that this was a woman whose heart was like stagnant water. Could it be that she was really trying to attract their attention? Of course, Jingwan wouldn't jump to such a conclusion. After all, some people were indifferent to other things and only focused on one thing. When the song ended, Jingwan couldn't help but clap her hands and pray sincerely. Daybreak seemed to have returned to her senses because of the applause. She stood up, squatted down, and returned to her original position. Regardless of how others looked at Daybreak, whether they thought that she was scheming or not, she remained quiet. https://11/11807/6653812. We will handle it as soon as possible. Chapter 331. Of course, Jingwan looked at it with a pure appreciation of art and did not feel that there was any problem with this dance. In fact, in the previous life, by chance, Jingwan had seen a special performance. In addition, perhaps due to Jingwan's identity, during the dance, her eyes never fell on Li Hongyuan. Jingwan's good mood naturally would not be affected. From start to finish, she watched with great interest and was not stingy with her applause at the end. Moving net from this, she had roughly grasped her temperament in this aspect and said that it made people feel slightly relieved. Mei Yi knelt in the lower position and gently exhaled. She could also see that this Jin Qian Wangfei might really be curious. However, when she looked at them, she did not have a strange gaze. Not only that, any random girl here might be better than her in terms of appearance, but there was not a bit of jealousy in her eyes. Her attitude was quite good. Looking at them, it was more like admiring a beautiful scenery, a beautiful painting, an exquisite piece of porcelain. Her eyes were full of admiration. To be able to cultivate this kind of attitude was actually not an easy thing. The environment of the maternal family before marriage, the attitude of the husband's family after marriage, especially the husband's attitude, were all crucial. This Jin Qian Wangfei should have been good before marriage. As for now, needless to say, Jin Qian Wangfei only occasionally looked at the person performing in front of him and did not contain any emotions. His eyes were very calm, as if he was looking at an ordinary person, an ordinary object. Compared to Jin Qian Wangfei, he was far from qualified. More often, his gaze was on Jin Qian Wangfei. As long as he looked at her, his gaze could not help but soften. Moreover, she did not need anyone to wait on her and instead personally peeled grapes for Jin Qian Wangfei. Looking at her skillful posture and seeing that there was no difference in the expressions of the people following her, one would know that this was definitely not the first time. Jin Qian Wangfei, that was the person held at the tip of Jin Qian Wangfei's heart. If he did not spoil her to the extreme, how could he agree to such a willful request? It must be known that if this kind of thing was spread out, it would not only damage Jin Qian Wangfei's reputation, Jin Qian Wangfei himself would also be implicated. Auntie Mei retracted her gaze. Some people were really born to make others jealous. Not only did they have the same status, they were also pampered and loved wherever they went. After grasping the basics, Aunt Mei basically knew how to act. Naturally, she was no longer as reserved as she was in the beginning, not knowing what to say. She was careful and eager, but she also grasped it just right. She grasped it to the point that it would not make people feel disgusted, and she had always addressed Jingwan as a little Gongzi. To a certain extent, Aunt May could be considered a knowledgeable person. Although she wasn't a native of Chuanzhou Prefecture, she had spent 70% of her time in this prefecture city. She was quite familiar with the customs of the people and had many things at her fingertips. If one didn't know her background, they might have thought that she was a noble lady from some family. Speaking of the delicacies of the Chuanzhou residents, we have already prepared a banquet without your permission. But because it's still early and the weather is hot, we decided to follow the rules of a banquet and prepared 2 dishes at once. What do you think, Your Highness and little Gongzi? If there is anything inappropriate. The owner of the boat has troubled us. This is good, there is nothing inappropriate. Jingwan said with a smile. Some things, even if one knew that it was troublesome, it was best not to refuse. Perhaps it should be said that this topic was brought up at the right time. Just as her voice fell, the first 2 dishes were delivered. They were first inspected on the pleasure boat by the side before being delivered to Jingwan and the others. No one felt that there was anything wrong. The first 2 dishes looked quite exquisite and exceptionally gorgeous. To be honest, it was not worse than the most gorgeous imperial banquet, but there were some things that were pleasing to the eye but not useful. Aunt May introduced the main ingredients of the 2 dishes as well as their origins. Although she didn't know that it was time for the main meal, Jingwan's appetite was still good. Aunt May saw it, but the 2 servant girls following her didn't have any intention to serve her. Aunt May was a little hesitant about whether to serve her. Jingwan directly started, but before she could eat, Li Hongyuan suddenly knocked on the table with his fingertips. Jingwan looked sideways at him and smiled. Wait, let me try first. Then she unceremoniously put it into her mouth. In the end, it was intercepted by Li Hongyuan halfway. With a little force, he put it into his mouth with chopsticks and chewed it carefully. He looked at Jingwan with a faint smile. Our little Gongzi Luo can't do anything disrespectful just because he is favored by this prince. In fact, there was a tacit understanding between the 2 of them. Logically speaking, with Gong Zhou's ability, there was probably no poison in the world that could be hidden from him. However, there were no absolutes. Now was a special time. If Jingwan wanted to taste the dishes, how could Li Hongyuan allow it? Jingwan was helpless, but when she thought of something, she gave up. She suspected that someone might have resistance to poison. As the saying goes, the world is big and there are many strange things. In her previous life, there were some people with special physiques. His special physique didn't seem to be a surprising thing. The taste is not bad. Our little Gongzi can try it. Jingwan raised her eyebrows. Most poisons need a process to take effect. His tongue can detect the poison. Since Prince said so, this student will naturally not be polite. https:///118007/6653814. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.